to bring our natural resource meeting to order. If you would please join me, we're going to stand and say the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let's see. I'm looking for Representative to lead us in prayer, please. Love you. Amen. This time I'd like to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Senator Chambers Armstrong, Senator Carpenter, Senator Mills,
Here.
Senator Schickel, Senator Southworth,
Here.
Senator Turner, Senator Webb, Senator Westerfield, Senator Wheeler, Senator Williams,
Here.
Representative Ballman, Representative Blanton, Representative Bowling,
Here.
Representative Bridges, Representative Burke, Representative Chester Burton,
Here.
Representative Dossett,
Present.
Representative Dotson,
Present.
Representative Flannery, Representative Fugate, Representative Gentry, Representative Johnson,
Here.
Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Miles, Representative Smith, Representative Wesley, Representative White, Representative Williams, Co-Chair Smith,
Present.
and Co-Chair Gooch.
I need a motion for the minutes. Motion second. All those in favor, sign of aye. Opposed likewise. We have a few, housekeeping things we need to go through today. And before I see if any members have comments, I'd like to just mention that Senator Turner was in a accident at his home, and we understand that he is recovering. If anybody has any further updates and you'd like to brief the committee on right now, I'd be happy to yield to anyone that may know more about it. Senator Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did speak with Senator Turner's, I exchanged several text messages with his daughter yesterday. He will definitely have a long road ahead probably with his injuries, but he continues to improve. I think they've even been able to get him sitting up and speaking. He doesn't really remember the accident, but he recognizes his family members and is anxious to get back to Kentucky. So I think that we can all say praise the Lord for that, and be happy about the good care that he's gotten, and hopefully we'll continue to get him back to his colleagues as quickly as possible.
Any other members that have any special guests or any reason to be recognized? All right, seeing none. Chairman Gooch, Co-Chairman, you have any comments you have for the committee?
Not this time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, very good. Let's go ahead and get started then. We'll go ahead and have our first presenters. You're already at the table. Very good. I'll yield it over to you, and just please identify yourself for our records, and we'll turn the mic over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to present to you today on something that I've been working in for the last 40 years here in the Commonwealth, and just recently people have become interested. My name is David Brown Kinlock. I am president of Appalachian Hydro Associates. We are the only hydroelectric developer in the Commonwealth and one of the few in this region, as a matter of fact. We develop small hydroelectric projects here in the Commonwealth and have been doing it for a while now. In fact, you may have seen in the news in the last couple days on Tuesday, we had a big press conference. Governor Beshear was there, and officials from Washington, D.C. announcing $100 million to build 4 new hydroelectric projects on the Kentucky River, which includes $73 million in funding coming from the Department of Agriculture as part of their PACE program. My company is partnered with Berea College on these projects, which we have worked with in the past. So I will get to those in a few minutes. As I go through these slides, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to interrupt me, and we'll get your questions answered as I go along. I'm here today to talk about hydropower's role in Kentucky's energy future. And hydropower, just a little bit of a background, it provides 26, almost 27% of the renewable energy, electric energy in the United States, and about 15% of the total electricity in the world. In the United States, it's only about 6% of the electricity in the United States. But in Canada, about 60% of their electricity comes from hydropower. In the United States, we have about 2,600 hydroelectric projects, but that only is on 3% of all the dams in the United States. So there is a lot of potential out there, but as you might well imagine, the very best sites have already been taken, so the larger sites. So now we're down to sort of what I call the medium sites, which they actually call small hydro, and that's the area that we work in. We've identified 616 megawatts of potential at 35 what they call non-hydro dams. These are dams, existing dams, where we could add hydro to them. So there is significant potential left in Kentucky. Just to let you know, hydropower, the very first AC generating plant in the world, was a hydro plant built in Colorado. It was the trial run for the Niagara Falls project. It was put in by Tesla and Westinghouse. And I recently was out in western Colorado with my family on vacation, and believe it or not, that hydro plant is still running today. That was the first in the world, and when my son is dead and gone, that plant will still be running. These are considered forever renewables. Yes, you have to do maintenance, you have to replace parts here and there, but these are plants that can go on and on. They're like the Ever-Ready Bunny, they just keep going. So there are basically 4 types of hydropower. There's conventional hydro that I work in and that you're probably familiar with. And then there are 3 other types. There's a new type of hydro called kinetic hydro, and that's where you put a propeller in a fast-moving stream. The problem with that is the amount of energy you can get out of just fast-moving water is not nearly as much as you can get from behind a dam. So these projects tend to be very expensive and not cost-effective. There's marine, which is wave and tidal power, which we really don't have any potential for that here in Kentucky, but that is a form which is especially being explored right now. And then there is also what's called pumped storage hydro, which I will talk about at the end of my presentation. There is a pumped storage facility that has been proposed in Bell County here in Kentucky. Just a real quick review of what we're talking about with hydropower. This is the hydro cycle. It's real simple. The sun beats down on the ocean. It evaporates the water. The clouds come up over the land. It either rains or snows down. And then if you look on that diagram there, you see where the number 5 is on the river. That's where we put the hydro plant. As the water is rushing back to the ocean, we try to capture some of that energy of the water rushing downhill. A hydroelectric plant is pretty doggone simple. This is sort of the basics of a hydroelectric plant, where you have a conventional, you have a dam, and then you have a powerhouse where you've got a propeller which is directly connected to the generator. That's why they last so long. It's so blame simple. You've just got basically one moving part. If you've ever been to a coal-fired power plant and you see all the belts and the coal pulverizers and the boilers and all of that, all that stuff wears out, and this stuff wears out too, but it's easily replaced and easy to keep them maintained and running. But what you do have to have is you have to have a differential in the water level, and that's your potential energy between the upper pool and the lower pool. So in conventional hydro, there's really two types. There's what's called peaking hydro. And if any of you all familiar, in Boyle County, the Harrington Lake, there's Dick's Dam there. And Kentucky Utilities built that. They've got about 150 feet of drop there. And they run it only at times when they need peaking power. They don't run it all the time. And they store that water up. Then there's the other type. That's the type of hydro I work in, which is called run-of-river. And there is no storage. The water comes to you. You use it or lose it. It just keeps moving downstream. We don't affect the flow of the stream at all. We either let it go over the top of the dam or through our turbines. So there's no big dam. There's no storage, but we can still make a tremendous amount of energy with run-of-river. One of the advantages of run-of-river is you're not flooding out everything. The environmental consequences of doing this are very, very minimal compared to most sources of energy. And if you design the hydroelectric plant right, you can almost eliminate the impacts on the environment. I just failed to mention, it's also what we consider Kentucky's best renewable resource, and the reason is there are more miles of streams in Kentucky than in any other state in the country except for Alaska. So we've got a lot of potential here in Kentucky. And so we consider it Kentucky's best renewable resource. So you've seen pictures like this. This is Hoover Dam. This is the peaking hydro kind, where you've got a big, big dam there and water backed up behind it, and they only run it when they really need electricity. Now let me take you to the other extreme. This is in Scott County. This is the Weisenberger Mill in Midway, Kentucky. We installed the first small hydro plant in Kentucky in 1989 at the Weisenberger Mill. And a little funny story about that, there's a federal law that says that we are allowed to do that called PURPA, but Kentucky Utilities didn't want us to interconnect. We had to take a case at the Public Service Commission, and the attorney for KU said on the record that hell would freeze over before one small power producer came on their system. Now, I haven't been to hell since 1989, but apparently it's a mighty cold place, as we've been online ever since. But this is run-of-river. Again, the water either goes through that little one-story part where the turbines are on the side of the mill, and we use the energy, or it tumbles over the top of the dam. It's use it or lose it. Okay, this is the Mother Ann Lee Hydroelectric Station. This is at Lock 7 on the Kentucky River. This is right at Shakertown in Mercer County. This particular plant was built for KU, and they operated up into the 1990s. They retired it in 2004, and we bought it in 2005 and renovated it. Here's some of the basic information on it. It was built in 1927. It's got 3 turbine generators, and it generates 2.2 megawatts of electricity with all 3 of the generators. We began the renovation of it in 2006, and it says there that all 3 of the turbine generators are currently running. I have one of the 3 generators taken apart, and it's being rewound up in Cleveland right now. But it will be back running soon once we get it completely rebuilt. And that's the way these old hydro plants are. Just to give you a feeling for it, the federal government did a study of all the power plants of any kind in the United States that were still operating, that were built before 1930. 99% of them were hydroelectric, including this plant. This plant, we've put over $3 million renovating this plant, and when we completely get done with the renovations, it will last for another 100 years. Its 100th birthday's coming up soon. But this particular one has been certified by the Low Impact Hydropower Institute as having a minimal impact on the environment, as a group of environmental groups that certify these plants. And then finally, the renewable energy credits from here are sold to Center College. Center helped us financially during the renovation. They buy some of our renewable energy credits, and then we sell the rest on the open market. So here's a great picture of the plant being built in 1927. They actually built a sawmill across the river in Jessamine County and sawed their own boards and brought them over. They put their concrete plant up where our substation is now, made their own concrete, made their own forms, and built a plant that is bulletproof. We'd had to do an inspection before we bought it, and there are no cracks in it. It was so well built. There's a picture of it in December of 1927, just about finished. And here's what it looked like when we bought it. I'll tell you what, it was leaking. The roof was leaking really bad, and everything was rusty, and all the paint was coming off of it. It hadn't been used in a while. There's what the ceiling looked like. We had stalactites and we had stalagmites on the floor. It's sort of like walking into a cave when we bought it. This is inside the generator. The part, what looks like the lower part in this picture is a stator. That stays steady. What's in the upper part of this picture is the rotor, which turns. That stuff is at 2,400 volts. It has to be really super clean. As you can see, when we bought it, it wasn't clean. And I personally spent months and months in there cleaning it with a toothbrush and Citrusolve, and then we baked it out and got it running again. So what it looks like when we had it, when I finally got it all cleaned up and revarnished. This is actually a picture of the generator which we're having rewound up in Cleveland right now. So there's a look at what the generators looked like when we bought this. So it was battleship gray, pretty rusty, pretty nasty, to be honest with you. And here's what it looks like today. When we painted these, I asked my partner, I said, what color do we paint them? And he says, no school colors, no blue and no red. So we decided to paint them Mardi Gras colors. And in the base there that you see, I took those plates off and took them over to my daughter's elementary school, and they painted the fish of the Kentucky River on there. So it's a kids' art gallery also. And now my daughter is 24 and living in New York, so I don't know. It was a while ago. Just to let you know what we do have in Kentucky, there are 12 running hydroelectric plants in Kentucky right now. And it makes up 1,100 megawatts of hydropower located in Kentucky. It provides about 7% of the electricity for Kentucky, and about 90% of all the renewable electricity in Kentucky comes from hydropower. There's a list of the 12 plants, and I've separated into two categories, large hydro and small hydro. Large hydro are usually done by large utilities or the government, mainly the federal government. And we have 9 of those plants here in Kentucky. The ones at the top of the list are ones that are owned by the federal government. They do supply electricity to utilities, and the power is used here in Kentucky. And then the lower ones are ones in general that are owned and run by utilities. Then at the bottom of the list, I've got small hydro. Those tend to be owned nationally by independent power producers such as our company. The top 2 you see there, the Matilda Hamilton Fee plant at Lock 12 and the Mother Ann Lee plant at Lock 7 are both owned by my company in partnership with, the first one is in partnership with Berea College. The second one is in partnership with Salt River Rural Electric Cooperative in Bardstown. A little interesting side note there, you'll notice they're both named after women. Most of the hydroelectric plants in the country are named after men, so we have determined that we will name all the ones we've got and the ones in the future in Kentucky after very important women in the history of Kentucky. Then the last one's the Weisenberger Mill, which I already showed you, and that's owned by the Weisenberger family. That one is really tiny compared to the others. So when we put in the hydroelectric plant at Lock 12, that was a partnership with Berea College. It came online in 2021, and it was the first new small hydroelectric plant that had been built in Kentucky in 94 years. And that's sort of a big deal, not only here, but nationally. It's been very difficult to get new small hydro plants built. There's a lot of older ones. And we are, as we talked about in the press conference Tuesday, Kentucky's not always at the top of the list in every category, but when it comes to small hydropower, Kentucky is the #1 state for building new small hydropower. And it is our intent to build a whole industry centered here in Kentucky with component suppliers and everything to supply small hydro and teach the rest of the country how to do it. Here at Lock 12, we have variable speed generators. This was the first new power plant, hydroelectric plant of any kind, any size, built in the United States using variable speed technology. We did it first here in Kentucky. We use submersible turbine generators. That's the direction that everything's going in small hydro because they're not susceptible to floods. We built the powerhouse in the abandoned lock chamber on the Kentucky River. We have a new second use for those lock chambers that haven't been used since 1992. We're using an innovative coating developed by NASA. Then all the other hydro developers are starting to use that coating now too. And again, our financial partner was Berea College. That was a real innovation because they have a very long-term view, as we have a long-term view, because these are very long-term projects. And guess what? There are now other colleges around the country after our model with Berea that are starting to partner with hydro developers to develop small hydro projects in other parts of the country. But that was the innovation from here in Kentucky. This is a picture of Lock 12 when we started building it. We put a steel coffer dam at the end of the lock chamber and then started pulling the water down. This is what it looks like after we had dewatered the lock chamber and we're starting to build the hydroelectric project in the lock chamber. There it is. It's coming up. All the crews that we use here are crews from Kentucky. The concrete contractor is Wright Concrete out of Pikeville. Our electrical contractor is Rymar out of Winchester. And all of our steel components are made by Modern Welding in Elizabethtown. Those are the steel draft tubes that were made by Modern Welding. They're put in there ready for concrete to be poured around them. And that's what it looks like when we're ready to put the hydro turbines in. Those are turbine generators. The bottom part of them is the turbine part. The upper part is the generator part. Completely submersible. They're in and running today. And that's sort of an overhead view of what it looked like when we were dewatered. We've got our trash rack, our bar screen that keeps the debris out. And we had the crane in there getting ready to lower those turbine generators into place. And that's what it looks like today. There's not much to see. We took people on tours the other day, and it's just quiet. It sits there, makes electricity. So it's not really exciting, but it's there doing its job every day. On to our Lock 14 project. That is under construction right now. It's about 3 megawatts. It's in Lee County near Beattyville and in the town of Heidelberg. Again, Berea College is our financial partner, and it says completion by the end of this year. It's actually going to be in early 2025 for some reasons with the IRS and tax credits, and we've had a couple delays out there recently. But the real innovation with this plant is it's super, super low maintenance, which is a real innovation. A lot of these plants are high maintenance, and these are real low maintenance. And some of the innovations are we're using the Voith Stream Diver, which is the most technically sophisticated hydro turbine generator in the world. But this plant will produce 30% more power than at Lock 12 and use 40% less concrete. And the innovation is it has no gearbox, it has no oil, it's all water lubricated bearings, no hydraulic fluid, which is all good for the environment, and there are no seals in it. The only maintenance we have to do on these units is we have to replace the bearings once every 15 years. It's also got a European design that's not been built in the United States before, and only once or twice in Europe where we have a horizontal trash rack underwater, and then we use a rubber dam section in the front that we can lower and push debris downstream. And again, our partner is Berea College. There's a picture of what one of these looks like, and we actually brought in one for our press conference on Tuesday, and the governor got a big kick out of seeing that it was there. It's 28,000 pounds. These are not little, but one of these will make enough electricity for about 500 homes at peak. And there's the innovation. When we talked about being simple and no parts, very few parts, it's one shaft that's got the generator on it, it's got the propeller on the other end, and it's just got water lubricated bearings. You can't get much simpler than that. It's got an electric gate in the front which turns it on and off. It's pretty doggone simple. And that's what it looks like on the plans. You see the blue line on the top, that's our upper pool of water at Lock 14, and then the lower line is the lower pool, and we make the energy on that 17-foot differential. There's a picture of when we dewatered the lock chamber up at Lock 14. It's amazing, the Kentucky River Authority, which controls these locking dams, they'd never seen one of these lock chambers dewatered before, so they brought all their people out to see it. And that's what it looks like when we started building the powerhouse. They're pouring concrete in between those forms. Here's what it looks like when we got the powerhouse up. We've got the draft tubes all in place now, and we're pouring concrete on top of the draft tubes. Then on top of that, we're getting things set up to put in all the steel to secure the rubber dams, and we'll pour the concrete around it. There's all the steel that goes in the top, all the rebar, the reinforcing. And this is a picture of our control buildings. They're all in, no school colors, I said, but they're in Berea blue with the Berea logos on them. So here are the projects that we're working on. We got at Lock 12 finished in 2021. Lock 14 will be just after the end of this year, will come online. That's 3 megawatts. Then we have what I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. We are starting 4 new projects, $100 million of investment here in Kentucky at Lock 11, Lock 13, Lock 10, and Lock 9. I was meeting with Berea College just before I came here, talking about the financing and getting all the contracts in place to get these projects started. We do have to get them done by the summer of 2031, according to our PACE grant, but we will do it, and we will get 12 new megawatts of hydroelectric power going in Kentucky. This is the Kentucky River Basin here, and when we put all this together, we will have Lock 7, and then we'll have Lock 9 through 14. And the beauty of that is we've got 100 feet of drop between Lock 9 and Lock 14 that we're taking advantage of, but we're never damming the water up that it gets out of the banks of the river. So there's no environmental damage by a big pool that floods out farmland. It's just what's there, but by capturing these, we can operate them together and optimize the power we're getting out of the projects. So that's what we're doing. I also wanted to give you a quick little update on pump storage hydro, which is the other type of hydro which has the potential here in Kentucky. You will start they're rebranding this as a water battery. You're familiar with conventional batteries, but this is a way that it can act like a battery, but it's actually a hydroelectric plant. And here's the principle. We have two reservoirs, an upper and lower reservoir, and we simply run water between the two. We use electricity to push the water up. When we don't need electricity, there's too much on the grid. And then when we need electricity for peaks, we run the water back down through the same equipment and make electricity and put it out on the grid. And that's why it's like a battery. Instead of storing energy in a battery, we're storing energy in the potential of water being at a higher elevation. And this is what it actually looks like. This is a project down in South Carolina that Duke Energy has. And there you see two different reservoirs at two different elevations with a dam in between. And all they do is at nighttime, when there's too much electricity on the grid, they pump water up into that upper reservoir. And at the daytime, they let it back down when people are needing electricity. So there again is a diagram of how that works. Again, at nighttime or when you've got too much electricity, they pump it uphill. It's stored in that upper reservoir, and then when you need electricity and the utility calls for it, you quickly put that same that same generator online. Instead of being pushed, it's now being pushed by the water instead of pushing the water up the hill. It's being pushed by the water coming downhill, making electricity instead of using it. So here's a few pieces of information about it. Be aware it's not making new energy. Pump storage does not make any new energy. It takes existing energy from the electric grid and simply stores it. And it doesn't do that without a cost. It's about 70% efficient. So if you take 10 kilowatts and move it up, kilowatt hours and move it up the hill, you can get about 7 back when you move it downhill. So it's only just shifting the time of day that electricity is on the electric grid.
We have a question real quick.
Please.
If you don't mind. Representative Gooch.
Okay, I think you just answered my question. I mean, it was obvious that when you're pumping that water back up, there's going to be a cost involved there. But
there are losses in the pipe. There's losses in the equipment and everything, so you don't get it all back. You get about 70% of it back. But the amazing part is they've been able to design equipment that can run it both ways. And the new thing is they're using what I talked about at Lock 12, the variable speed technology, was the pump wants to run a lot faster than the turbine does. So they can use variable speed technology to keep them at the most efficient point using that exact same piece of equipment.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We also have Senator Wheeler has a question.
Thank you. And I mean, this is a very interesting subject matter. I mean, is it difficult to get permits for these or something like that? Because I noticed, it seems like I was watching something on Discovery recently where there were some fairly large hydroelectric dams that the government constructed during the New Deal in the 1930s that they've recently started demolishing or something.
It is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to...
The Lock 12 and Lock 14 projects, we have to get a license from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, 7.5 years. No controversy, no one saying anything negative about it. It still took 7.5 years to get through the bureaucracy in Washington. And just to give you a time frame on it, the Lock 14 project, from the time we started looking at it to the time we actually dug a spade in the ground to get it going, 16 years. And that's for a small project.
And, Mr. Chairman, may I ask a couple short questions? So what type of, I guess, upfront investment in the permitting process do you have to make in order to even, I guess, check the feasibility of this and go through that process?
It's substantial, and all of these projects, until we have the financial closing with Berea, it's all out of my pocket or my partner's pocket.
Okay.
I don't have any stocks or bonds or 401ks or anything like that. Everything I own is in investing in these projects to get them to the point of building them. So you would say I'm a foolish investor, but I believe in what I'm doing.
And I guess in the final one, I mean, are these financially viable without, I guess, government credits, or can they, I mean, in the sense of they economically, could you afford to invest without the potential of a renewable credit coming back or something of that sort?
Well, they're very difficult to do without that. And part of it's all the regulatory things. And even when we get them running, yesterday I spent a whole day with a federal inspector going to 3 of our sites and showing it all to him. We primarily rely on the investment tax credits that are available, federal investment tax credits that are available to all renewable projects.
Like I said, I've been very impressed by your presentation here, and I mean, I'm thinking like, this seems to me to be a much more intelligent application of resources than, basically future garbage dumps that we're building with all these solar projects throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky, where, you have toxic substances that probably are imported from China and things like that. And, I just recently got a complaint from one of my county judges when one of these projects are going on that they promised they were going to hire over half the workforce locally, and they hired like 4 people and several crews of foreign laborers brought in to finish up the project.
All
I
can say is our projects are
and thank you for employing really great guys like Kendall and Shannon Wright. That's wonderful.
That's who we work with. Kendall and Shannon Wright. They were out there with us Tuesday, and their biggest problem is finding enough guys to work for them.
Yeah,
that's their struggle. But we're hiring all local folks. These are projects that when a hydroelectric bill goes through in Washington D.C., like in the Senate, it's completely bipartisan. It goes through 96-0 because that's one thing that the 2 parties can agree on, and it's hydroelectric power. It makes so much sense. Our problem is that there are only a certain number of sites. We don't really need to be building new dams in this country, but there are a lot of dams that we can use that are existing. The ones on the Kentucky River have to be there for water supply. 1/3 of the citizens of the Commonwealth get their water from the Kentucky River. Those dams have to be there. We might as well get a second use out of them.
Thank you.
Well, Representative Dodson has a question as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I, too, enjoy the presentation. I appreciate the engineering aspect of it, the ingenuity that goes behind it. And it is very simple, but yet so far out of reach for myself. I would be so incapable. But just watching the presentation is really good, and I appreciate you coming today. But one of your first slides, and I think it was the first slide, you had mentioned that that's 93% of our consumption of energy is that coal-based? Is that 7% is renewable, and 90% of that renewable comes from hydro. So that leaves less than 1% that comes from solar, wind.
Right now, it's low like that right now, but most of the rest is coming either from coal or from natural gas.
Right.
And just to let you know, there are utilities in Kentucky which are importing a lot of electricity from out of the state that's being generated with natural gas.
Gotcha. So really, when you look at the return on investment that people make, and just piggybacking on what Senator Wheeler said, and that was my thought, 30 minutes ago, is when you look at the solar farms and you look at all and this really has nothing to do with your purview, I guess, but from our standpoint, being on this committee, when you look at all the energy aspects and you see all the solar farms and you see all the potential harm that it can do to our farmlands and things, our return on investment isn't that great with some of these renewables. But with hydro, I see the great potential in it. So, coming here and speaking to us and opening our eyes to a lot of these things, I think is very critical, and I appreciate you coming today. But it also helps me to realize that a lot of our energy, we really need to take a look. Are these worth the investment? Are we getting the return on it that we should be? Thank you.
Well, I can tell you, at least from our perspective, Berea College goes through this stuff with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that the investment makes sense for them. Because why they are investing this is, yes, they believe in sustainability and helping Eastern Kentucky, but the bottom line is they're looking at a long-term investment that will educate kids for free at Berea College for years to come. And that's why they've invested in it. It makes sense from so many perspectives for them.
We have Representative Gooch, Co-Chairman Gooch with the question.
Okay. And certainly I see the benefits of hydro. Out in the Northwest, where you have really large scale facilities, they have had a fish cost there simply because, they have to mitigate the migration and the spawning of the salmon and those sort of things. And it would appear that these smaller units don't have any kind of environmental issues to the fish population, or is not as much.
In Kentucky, we don't have the migratory fish like they have out in the Pacific Northwest. And depending on how you design your hydroelectric turbine, they're either very fish friendly or very fish unfriendly. And we actually looked at particular turbines in the past and questioned what they would do to fish, and our research confirmed they were not fish friendly. These machines we use are what are called axial flow turbines, and we keep the inlet speeds very low for where we take the water in, because when a fish feels a tug on them, they turn around, turn the other way. And if you can keep the water speeds low, they don't even get near your plant. If they were to get through, we've got bar screens, which are pretty tight, that they can't get past there. And if they get past there, the smaller ones, these turbines are designed in such a way that they have between a 95 and 100% survivor rate going through. What I like to tell people is that it's not like a pump. A pump chops at the water, but here the water is pushing the blade. And if you've ever tried to take a speck of dust out of your iced tea, it always goes one way or the other, but there's a cushion of tea between there. And we've got a cushion of water between the fish and the blade. And so the fish goes through and never actually touches the blade.
Okay, well, I think everything that happens out there, when you generate electricity or whatever, nothing is totally clean or green or not posing some type of damage to our wildlife. But I can certainly tell you that we listen to our fish, and I'm reminded of what did the fish say when he swam into a wall? Damn. So, but with that, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, brother. Senator Mills.
Well, I might.
I was gonna,
I was going to say I
I
might
was
tell
gonna
you
tell
about.
a joke, but I'll let that one stand. Just, could you expand? I heard you. I'm up here. Straight
Oh,
ahead.
sorry about
No,
that.
no problem. You said something a while ago that I thought I wanted you to expand on. You said we don't need to create more dams in this country. Could you expand on that? What do you mean by that?
We have 75 to 90,000 existing dams in this country. Yeah, we will need some new ones for water supply in a few places, but building dams strictly for hydroelectric, it's really not needed. We've got existing dams we can use. So the need to build new dams when we've got so many out there like we're repurposing on the Kentucky River. And we've got a lot of other dams around the Commonwealth that, let's just say, we have our eye on, and we're trying to come up with designs that are innovative. Again, not building any new dams, but getting a second or third use out of that existing dam. The one thing I'd tell you, Representative Gooch, about the environmental stuff that we just learned, it turns out the U.S. Fish and Wildlife has now done a study downstream of our Lock 12 plant that we just put in 3 years ago. And since we put that plant in, guess what? The mussels downstream have started to come back because we've taken the energy out of the water and slowed the water down, and it's much more conducive for mussels to grow in that area. So the way to thank us is they've stopped our Lock 11 project and said, we want you, before we give you the final clearance, to go do a mussel study so we have a baseline to compare in the future. So I've got a mussel crew coming out, $25,000 worth of study in early October.
The head guy that owned Patagonia for a while was on this big push to try to bust all the dams that he could bust, and he had his own theory behind it. And you've had a lot of people sort of get lost on whatever science they're pushing at the time in there. But the presentation that you made for us was twofold. One, we knew that we had a lot of these projects in Kentucky that a lot of the members were not familiar with, and we have the big one in Bell County that is part of Senator Turner's district, and our House member over there, Adam, yes, Representative Bowling. So we were excited about it. So when we put this together, we wanted to try to let the members have the experience that we're seeing here today with a lot of questions and input. But we do have several members that have some questions. We have Senator Williams will be next, and then I have Representative Smith on deck.
Senator, here I am.
Oh, sorry.
Just a quick question. So, are these reliable all year round? I mean, do they sustain, or in the summertime when we get lower flow? What is our annual usage rate like?
Okay, the annual usage rate, our capacity factor, and that's how they measure these things, of these new ones is about 53%. That compares to a capacity factor for solar of about 17% and wind of 30%, something like that. Especially, I'm talking about run of river because, we can't operate in droughts. We're barely operating right now. We haven't gotten much rain lately. And during floods, we can't operate. So we sort of call it a Goldilocks technology. Not too little, not too much as far as the amount of water. But we can still make a lot of it. But no, we are not running,
So it's about half.
a little bit over
About half
half
the year.
yeah.
A little over half
for
the year.
for run of river. Okay. Now the peaking plant that KU has there at Dick's Dam, they'll run that whenever there's a need for power. So,
Thank you.
And Representative Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. First of all, if you could, let Berea know that mostly in Eastern Kentucky, we appreciate their investment in education and also in this technology. They have, I've really never met their administration or their board or their investors, but every time something happens, it seems like Berea is involved in our area in Eastern Kentucky. So thank you.
they
If you
couldn't
can
be a
pass that
better
on.
partner.
Yeah.
They're absolutely wonderful.
And one point I'd like to make, I consider you probably similar to an expert witness in your field. And so you're talking about supplying the grid. We've had testimony in front of us telling us by the grid manager. There's a company that manages several states, and you're aware of, that in 26 there's going to be a crossing of supply and demand. Are you familiar with this? Are you familiar with the supply being able to keep up with the demand within a few years, not 10 years, not 15 years? I'm talking about, he said in 26, and that's the best I can recollect his testimony. Could you just elaborate
I'm
a little
not
bit?
familiar with that particular study, but getting back to one of the questions over here, the problem is, if you said to me tomorrow, I want you to go to Taylorsville Lake and put hydro on there so we can have it in 2026, because of all the permitting, I couldn't do it.
No.
It would be a minimum of 10 years if everything worked right.
In our area, we're blessed with Laurel Lake.
Yes.
We're blessed with electricity. We're blessed with a reservoir. We're blessed with fresh water. It's all utilized. We've got even Woodson Bend, our Wood Lake, I believe is what it is, another reservoir. And we looked into it in Manchester 20 years ago. They was telling us it'd take 15 to 20 years to get the Corps to approve it. Yeah. I mean, everybody's discouraged from doing anything. And you're discouraging today on future. So I want to ask this question and I'll close up. Is there a lot of difference I'm going to say you're familiar with the atmosphere, with pollution,
Sure.
with carbon. Is there much difference in us burning fossil fuel in the United States than burning it in Russia, Germany, France? I'm talking about in our atmosphere. I'm not a scientist.
It all goes into the same atmosphere.
Okay, so your testimony is today that if they're burning it there, we're being polluted here.
Yes, I mean
Okay.
it moves around the world.
Okay, so my last question to you would be, would you recommend, with your knowledge, the stoppage of fossil fuel tomorrow? With your knowledge of our grid, with the knowledge of our population, with the knowledge of how we're surviving as humans today, what would be your recommendation? Would it be a 20-year model, a 30-year model, or would you do a fast track like some past administrations done and just shutting it down? and I'm talking about coal. I know gas is another thing that they're right on top of now. Get rid of gas stoves, get rid of all this usage. But realistically, as a population, and your expertise in this field, could you comment on it anyway and give me your viewpoint on our future?
It turns out that my master's work in college was in electric generation planning, and I used to be an expert witness at the Attorney General's office at the PSC, so I know this pretty well. But you can't turn a switch on and off and keep our society going. You have to bridge into the future with our existing technologies. If we said we wanted to completely decarbonize today, it can't happen. You have to make a transition, and the transition is obviously the capacity we have. When you build a power plant of any kind, it is there to be used for 20, 30, 50 years, and that is the bridge that, if you want to have a different future, you have to have a bridge to get there.
We have another question from Senator Williams, but you have two more slides, and we're going to get really tight on time. So I just want to give you a heads up, Senator Williams.
I'm sorry at this. I just want to ask a quick question. So I'm looking on a list, the Markland Dam on the Ohio River. That's Kentucky, since we own the river, right? I didn't see that in your list of dam projects.
Yeah, you didn't see Greenup Dam on there either. And the reason you didn't see Markland or Greenup on there is they've actually built the hydroelectric plant on the other side of the river, and the whole hydroelectric plant is in the portion, that slim portion of the river that's owned by Indiana.
The 100 feet.
The 100 feet.
Thank
That's
you.
where. That's why it's not on this slide, and that's why Greenup's not on this slide. I'll tell you another tragedy. When you saw that list of those utilities, most of the power at those utility plants are being used in other states because the utilities in Kentucky. I was involved in the negotiations. We tried to get the utilities in Kentucky to take Cannleton, Smithland, Meldal, and we were so close on each of them, and in the end they turned them down, and then American Municipal Power up in Ohio came in and snapped up those sites. Yes, those are Kentucky sites, but the electricity is now being used in Ohio.
Thank you. Whoever negotiated that settlement on the river, I'm not sure. It was looking to the future.
Representative Gentry has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David, thank you. I'm way over here.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for the presentation. That was insightful. I got an easy question, quick question. Basically, what you said was what makes your work feasible right now are these federal tax credits that are available. Is that correct?
Yeah, that helps out. The problem with these, it's an extremely long-term investment. And if I would just go to a bank, they'd say, well, I want my money returned right now. And I'm building a plant. When I build a plant, it's going to be there for 100 years, And so it's not the way our economy works on what's the profit in the next quarter. So without the tax credits, I don't get to make that initial investment that is so critical to be able to actually build these plants.
And what is the mechanism that provides these tax credits now and into the future? Is it the Inflation Reduction Act, or?
It was renewed through the Inflation Reduction Act, or was it the infrastructure bill? It's one of those two where they extended.
And how far in the future are we going with these tax credits?
They extended it for 10 years.
Okay.
For 10 years. So, and who knows what they'll do after that? But that's as far as they have built out. And as far as our industry, it's a wonderful thing that they had they had been renewing it on a year-to-year basis, and it's very difficult to go and plan for 16 years and then hope that there's going to be something there when you finally get to the finish line. So with a little bit of time out there, we can go and make these investments.
Thank you. I think those of us that, excuse me, been following this fairly closely understand it's a long transition. This whole clean energy new economy that the world is going toward, and I haven't heard anybody that say it was going to be a switch or attempted switch, and that's outside of this room. So,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
The other thing I'd say about that is it's not going to be guys like me that are going to do the heavy lifting. It's going to be the young people. That's why we've partnered with Berea College. It's the young people today that it's so important that they see what is potential out there.
Well, we thank you for your presentation. Do we have any members that have any other questions for you? Representative Wesley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to apologize for being late, record my presence here today, but I noticed there was a couple locks that wasn't on here. There was skipping a couple because I fished quite a few of them. And Lock 12 is Estill County. That's where I live.
Yep, I've seen your signs through. Spent a lot of time. I was with, and I'll say that we've gotten tremendous support from the county judges.
Yes.
Judge Donnie Watson is incredible.
Doing an awesome work.
He really is.
So my question would be to you, sir, is Lock 11 and 13, do you guys have any plans to do anything with them?
That's 2 of the 4 projects that we announced on Tuesday that we're putting them in.
Okay.
At 11, and those are our next 2. 11, we'll get started construction as soon as they give us the environmental clearance. I've got the contracts all ready to go on Lock 11, and then Lock 13 will be the one right after that.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Seeing no further questions, I wanted to thank you for your presentation today. Obviously, you had a lot of interest. I have a feeling you'll probably have some follow-up from our committee, and looks like we'll see you around Kentucky as these things start to bear some fruit. Just to get the attention of the members, last meeting I was not here, but there was an issue that was brought up by Senator Turner, and I think Chairman Gooch had asked that the cabinet be present for us to address some of the issues about a permit that it looks like if it's not taken care of here within the next couple weeks, it's going to cause a lot of people to lose their jobs. So we're going to try to get to the bottom of it. Just ask the members to be patient. I'm probably going to request the cabinet come in front of us if we're not able to get this resolved. I know Representative Odell Smith had several questions and had to leave earlier, but we do need to get to the bottom of what's taking place here with this company. At first glance, and Chairman Gooch may know more about it, Senator Wheeler may be more in tune with it because I was not here at the last meeting, and I know that Senator Turner had put a letter about this permit issue out there. But as I look at this stuff today, this has been put on looks like temporary suspension that's been withdrawn. The company that's involved says they have not requested this. They're as shocked as anybody else. We've asked the cabinet to show us the information that would cause them to make this decision. That information has not been given to me, so it seems like we're getting stonewalled. That's just not going to happen. We're going to get this information, good, bad, or indifferent. But if you can shed some more light on it, Senator Wheeler, do you have more
Chairman,
details?
I think Jeff, you're a little bit familiar with some of this, aren't you? I mean, I don't know if you might be able to give you. I think the subject was brought up with Senator Turner and myself, so.
I think
there
you
has
guys worked on it. I just came in on the tail. I was out of the state.
I think there were some at least semi-productive discussions with the cabinet. Although I think we can, get with y'all's line, and Jeff could probably give you some more details on that.
I mean, we can follow up, but I think that fell apart yesterday, and they went ahead and took some action. So, and I know Representative Turner obviously is not able to take up the charge right now, so that means we'll take care of it. But just want to let the members know that we are in the process of requesting some information, and we're going to get these answers on and have it explained to us. And just wanted to find out if any member had more information for the committee. But just stay tuned, watch your emails as we move forward to get to the bottom of this. But we certainly don't want to fail to take action and have these men and women lose their job over something as simple as what I'm seeing here is just some sort of an issue at the cabinet. So with that said, do we have any members that have any announcements? Everybody here got roll call, so we had other members come in. With that, I ask for a motion to adjourn. Oh, wait. Okay. All right, so do we have a motion to adjourn?